Hello, everyone. Hello, and welcome to this session, Making the Local News. We've got the next 45 minutes. We'll be talking about sort of local, regional news that you can tune into nightly on your telly. So this is part of the RTS Futures Virtual Careers Fair. So thank you to the event sponsors. The headline sponsor is NFTS, and the bronze sponsor is IMG Studios. So to our panel. Here we have Rachel Sharman. Rachel is part of the senior leadership team at BBC East. And we have Kit Bradshaw of ITV Meridian, who will be joined a bit later on by Emmanuel Lhoni from BBC North West. Sorry, BBC Look North, got that wrong. And we were supposed to be joined by Kieran Jenkins from Channel 4 News, but he's having a baby at the moment, so is unable to join us, which is, I think, as excuses go, a pretty good one. So let's start with the panel that we have here. Rachel, you've been working BBC East of England for 20 years, you said. Can you tell us about that? You know, what roles have you, what jobs have you done in your time there?
Okay, hello everyone. Firstly, I started off in radio actually, still in what we call the East Patch. The East Patch is massive for the BBC. It stretches from the North Norfolk coast right the way down to Essex, the M25, all the way across to Luton, Milton Keynes, Cambridgeshire, Northamptonshire, Peterborough. Okay, so we're talking a massive chunk of the East of England there. I started in radio at BBC Radio Northampton, and I worked there as a reporter and a newsreader. Then we had these things called video journalists. This was the breakthrough where journalists were going to use big hefty television cameras, not the little television cameras they use now. And I was the first video journalist in the East of England, cutting, filming and editing my own packages for TV. Then I moved across to Norwich. I did breakfast presenting, late presenting. I was a senior journalist there, and in 2007 I became one of the 4 assistant editors that we have on the programme, which meant I was responsible for managing a team of people, and my main role is to produce the 6:30 half-hour TV programme that we have. So that's me.
After 20 years in the area, you must sort of know it sort of like the back of your hand, really. That must be kind of an advantage to covering that patch for so long.
Yeah, well, I think actually I was actually born in Norwich. Freakily enough, I went away. I went away to university. I lived in Germany for 3 years. Then I came back, and I thought, oh well, I'll just work back in Norwich for a year or so. And I think that's what a lot of people think, and I'm still here. There is something really nice about being able to cycle into work in 10 minutes to the base where you work, to live among the people whose stories you tell and stories you report on and whose news you deliver. There is something really important about being part of and having a family within the community that you serve, for me anyway. So that's what I like about doing the work that I do.
Mm-hmm. Kit, your route has been slightly different. You started at Sky and national news on radio and then TV as well, and now you've gone to ITV Meridian, sort of relatively recently. What's the comparison of the two like? You know, national versus regional news.
Yeah, I mean it's a big change. So yeah, after I did my journalism qualifications, I got a job at Sky as a producer. First of all, on the TV output. Producing the rolling news channel, and obviously, as you'd probably imagine, on a rolling news channel environment, it's a lot about the latest line, the latest bit of agency copy, the latest picture that's coming in. But it's a sort of a great training ground for sort of honing your skills. And as you say, then I did some news reading on Sky News Radio, which provide bulletins for commercial radio stations. So a bit of live news reading, like Rachel did as well on the BBC. So, but that's great if you're interested in sort of broadcasting. Radio is great at honing some of your skills. You know, your broadcast voice, getting rid of those nerves of doing stuff live, but also being able to write really short, accurate copy. And yeah, and then I did some reporting for Sky News, and then recently got a job as a full-time reporter for ITV Meridian, which is a big region in the southeast for people who don't know it. I'm in the east of the region, so covering Kent and also a bit of East Sussex, but also we go all over to Southampton, down to Dorset, up into the Thames Valley, and we have sort of different opt programs for slightly different versions of Meridian for each part of that big region. So yes, it's a very different environment. The pace is very different, and it's as you'd expect. It's much more geared up towards linear timed bulletins, whereas Sky is obviously a rolling news channel. So at Sky on a day I might do, if I'm on a story and they want me live, I might do 15 lives in a shift as a reporter there if I'm stood on a live location every hour. Or twice, multiple times an hour sometimes. And obviously at ITV, I'd probably just do the one live for the evening program if I'm doing a live. So there's big differences.
And it's a difference, I guess, in terms of what you need to know. Your patch is now very specific. You said, I presume, what was your awareness of that area like before you got the job, and how did you really immerse yourself in it to be able to cover it properly?
Yeah, a bit like Rachel, I actually grew up in Kent for sort of quite a lot of my childhood, from about 7 to leaving secondary school, and so I knew Kent. But as most regional TV news, they're really big patches. So I grew up in one part of Kent, but that's very different to all the way down in Dover, or people have very close identities to their local communities. So yeah, getting an awareness of the whole county and the different issues on the agenda, be it planning developments or crime in different parts of the county, is something that I'm still getting up to speed with, really. I started in August. But one point that I really wanted to get across, compared to working at a national broadcaster, a lot of the time actually national and international broadcasters, they do generate their own news, but a lot of the time they are reacting to events, be it the 5 o'clock press conference at the moment, or stuff that's being generated by other people, be it newspapers, be it global affairs. Regional news, and what I love about it, is 9 times out of 10, you are generating your own stories. And it is the best place in broadcast news, I think, if you love exclusive stories and finding original news, because you can pitch an idea at the morning meeting and it's the lead on the 6 o'clock program that evening. And that's really satisfying. And I don't think you do get that at national broadcasters, but the rate of original news is so much higher in regional TV newsrooms.
Is that your experience, Rachel? You've been there for a while. I'm sure that opportunities to leave the east of England have arisen, but you've not taken them.
No, I think I would absolutely agree with Kit. I also about sort of the story, getting your stories out there, finding them from your contacts that you've got, and then bringing them to life on TV. I also think what a regional newsroom gives you is it throws you in there, because there are not that many people to hold your hand. We don't have item producers in BBC East. I know lots of TV regions do. So effectively, we only have 4 roles every day that are not broadcast reporting, I'm going to be on TV that day roles. And so you are going to get on telly, you are going to get out there, you are going to go and film, you are going to make your stories. It's not going to be, oh, well, actually, first you have to do 18 months sitting at a desk producing somebody else and making planning phone calls. That's what I love about local news, that everybody pitches in, and you get on telly, and you get on telly quick.
And and the original news point that Kit was talking about, is there do you worry as a regional newsroom that you're going to have a good idea and the nationals are going to nick it and you're not going to get any credit for your brilliant work? Is that if you want that recognition, should you go to a national newsroom, or can you have it in one of your newsrooms?
Well, you can absolutely have it in a local TV newsroom. I mean, we have lots of our stories that go on on the 6 o'clock news, or go on breakfast. We've got one of our stories tomorrow, one of our reports about a guy that's walking at the moment, he's paralyzed from the waist down, and he has sort of an exoskeleton that enables him to walk, and he is walking at the moment earning money for the NHS, which saved his life. And that's a real kind of powerful human interest story that Breakfast are taking. As it ran on our program, they are taking that film. And there is also the resource there to plunder. If network are interested in a story that you've got, then there are different ways of doing it. There are different people to speak to. You can still cover the story that is on the 6 o'clock news half an hour later in your program, because you can be more local, you can be more granular, because you are serving the people who live there and really care, rather than network that is serving the whole country. That's what I think anyway. I don't know what your experience is, Kit.
Yeah, and no, I agree with a lot of that. I mean, at ITV, a lot of the reports in the regions get shared with other regions, or another region will ask you for a version of it, or it could go to national. And because we maybe don't have the sort of the same scale of news gathering operation as the Beeb does, regional ITV reporters regularly appear sort of doing lives for network as well, as I'm sure they do on the BBC from time to time as well. And the other thing is what you, I can't remember the word you use now, Ed. Was it sort of notoriety or recognition for your, yeah. I guess it depends what you mean by that. Because, for example, I did reporting on Sky News, but I'm not slagging off Sky News, but there's a certain type of person who watches a rolling news channel, and it's not your man and woman in the street normally. You know what I mean? It's a certain type of, be it a news junkie or, on in hotel rooms or in lobbies. Whereas a lot of people still sit down and watch their evening regional news program. The figures for the BBC are amazing, Rachel. I know you've had some of your, often it's the most viewed evening program on the BBC, and ITV's, in many regions aren't far behind as well. So what I've been amazed by from doing this job from August is the amount of people that you go out to interview and they ask you about the presenters. Oh, have you met Fred and Sangeeta? And they talk to you like they're their friends, because they've been sitting down and watching them in their living rooms at 6 o'clock every evening for sort of 20 years. So that's really special, I think. It's got a bit of that, human connection, which maybe the big national broadcasters don't have.
Okay. So, I mean, something that we've spoken about briefly before the session started was, what that means for the future. A lot of big sort of national newsrooms are really putting a lot of effort into their digital propositions. But, you were saying, Rachel, that your team is tighter. It's just, there's not as much you can do, just surely due to numbers. So how do you, as regional newsrooms, deliver that digital content, which is where I guess future audiences might lie?
Yeah, well, we've been reworking our futures, our planning team, and at the moment I'm leading on that. So what we're basically trying to do is do joint commissioning. So we will commission a story at the outset saying whether it's going to make for a digital video, which we would then run on our TV program as well in the digital video format. Often we wouldn't change it. That's part of our campaign to try to attract younger audiences and try to sort of push people towards our program as well. Or it would be commissioned as a digital word only text piece. So basically what we're starting to do is we are telling our journalists who have previously just produced TV content that actually know they either need to film in a different way and produce the digital video itself, or they need to gather quotes and get that material back to the office a lot faster, so that the digital story can be written up in the time critical way that it needs to be, so that we can join up our coverage. We're trying to make people as digitally literate and capable as we possibly can, really. But if that is the BBC's Achilles heel, it is a slow, cumbersome tanker that is trying to catch up with all these digital natives that are, miles away.
So is that how somebody, you know, a career starter or somebody in the early days of their career, is that how someone can stand out to you? Are digital skills something that you would look for? What
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that is really exciting to broadcasters and to people like me, people that just, you know, having a digital presence, having a social media presence, getting your news, getting your information that way is second nature. You know, it's not something that you're having to learn or to teach yourself or learn from other members of your family. Just to do that as a matter of course, to communicate in that way, to gather stories that way, to make contacts in that way is hugely valuable. And you know, you should, as a young person, you should never underestimate or undersell those skills, because they are crucial to broadcasters at the moment.
Kit, you came through the city MA journalism route. You know, so a couple of questions. Is doing that further education essential to getting a career in broadcast news? And you know, what skills did that equip you with that have enabled you to get to where you are?
Yeah, I mean, it's worth saying I tried to not have to do a master's. I tried to get jobs in journalism. I did an undergraduate degree in politics, so a non-journalism degree, and I tried to apply for jobs and get experience and go straight into the industry. I did manage to get some news reading jobs at sort of local radio stations, ad hoc, nothing full time, and I just couldn't pay the bills basically. So I had to go into, I took a detour into press office work to save up to do my master's basically a couple of years later. And it is a tough decision for a lot of people because it is a lot of money. Back then you couldn't get a student loan, so I literally had to save up, you know, over years to do it. I think you can get finance now and there's bursaries for them. A lot of employers still want some kind of journalism qualification. You can get that in so many different ways. You can get onto a trainee scheme like the BBC and ITV run, where they give you those qualifications as part of that scheme. You can do a short course, which is a lot cheaper, like a 3-month NCTJ. So there's loads of options, but I don't know what Rachel thinks about this as someone who actually hires people, but my experience applying for jobs on the other side of it before I did my MA was they were still asking for an accredited journalism qualification or equivalent, so an NCTJ or a BJTC accredited course. I don't know if that's still the case, Rachel.
I think it depends what role you'd be going for, but I would say it was really advisable. I did a postgrad diploma in broadcast journalism at Falmouth in Cornwall when I did mine, and I would say it was totally invaluable. Really, I think you know, the sort of work experience route is very, very limited at the moment. I mean, it's just not there during COVID, as you would expect, but before that it was very limited. The apprenticeship schemes and trainee schemes are worthwhile, but are quite, oh hello, highly sought after. So if you can afford it, and it also demonstrates an interest and a commitment as well, I would say, from someone that's looking at a load of people and looking to hire someone.
We have been joined by our third panelist, Emmanuel Honey. Welcome. You're on mute currently.
Hi, sorry. How typical. Hello, sorry, thank you.
Hi, how are you?
I'm great, thank you. How are you?
I'm all right, thank you. Okay, so we're currently talking about routes into the industry. Could you tell us a little bit about how you got to where you are and what you're doing, I mean, at the moment, and where you've been for the past 15 minutes?
So I went to Leeds University, did my broadcast journalism degree there, and then I went to City University in London to do my master's in international journalism. And then I ended up working at the BBC World Service, which is their international side of things, as a bilingual reporter. And that was on a scheme for bilingual reporters. So I speak French as well. So I did that for, it was about 6-7 weeks. And then after that, I ended up working for BBC Stories, which was their kind of digital output department. And they were doing a lot of like first person stories, and current affairs department, should I say. And then after that, I went back to work with BBC Africa. And then I worked with BBC Minute as a presenter. So that's a radio news program, which also goes out on the World Service, and it's news in a minute. And I did that for almost 2 years, and then decided to move back home to Manchester, where I'm based now. And I work with the BBC regional television news program, Northwest Tonight. And where I've been in the last 15 minutes, we were on air. So that's where I've been just helping with productions aspects of things. Yeah.
Very good. And we were talking about how when you work in a regional newsroom, actually it's a very different experience from working in a national newsroom like the ones that you're working in when you were doing, well, or international newsroom for the World Service, I guess. How can you tell us a little bit about that comparison, and quite particularly, you know, what was useful for you in actually getting your early jobs in journalism?
So I think the big difference that I've noticed is there's a kind of there's more focus, I guess, in terms of the communities, because you're smaller. You know, when I was working for BBC Minute, that was, I mean, we had, at the time, we had about 25, we were going out on 25 different stations around the world. So you can imagine that our audience was like, I don't even know the number, but we had a huge audience. Whereas when you're working in regional news, it's a bit more concentrated, which is great, really, because it allows you to kind of really get into the different communities, and you kind of discover what specific issues are affecting the different communities. You know, a story that might work on a global aspect might not necessarily work for regional news. But at the same time, there are also issues that have happened on a global scale. So, for example, with the Black Lives Matter protests last year, you know, that was something that kind of came out of, you know, a horrible incident that happened in the US, but the response was global. And so to be in Manchester and to kind of see the response of an issue like that on a local aspect, that was interesting as well. So I think that's mainly one thing that I've noticed, the difference in terms of the communities that are within the community, that are in the patch, and the different issues that affect them. And I think the thing that helped was that when I was doing my first degree, I was doing work placements during the summer. So, you know, during the academic year, I'd obviously be at university, but then during the summer, I'd get like 2 weeks. I did 3 weeks at a commercial radio station. I did 4 weeks at BBC Rip Off Britain as a researcher. And then I also did, I think, 3 weeks at a production company. So that was really good because it kind of gave you hands-on experience, and you kind of got to see how different teams worked, because news is big. You know, you can have current affairs, you can have investigations, there are loads of different things going on. So that was quite helpful in terms of being in the rooms with the different people and learning about how to pitch ideas for certain platforms, and, you know, different skills that I was able to learn along the way as well.
And so, you know, what would you say for you and for Kit, and also, you know, to hear from you from a slightly different perspective, Rachel, what advice would you give to somebody who wants to work in news broadcasting, doesn't know even where to begin, where to start? You know, you did a number of internships and work experience, Emmanuel. Is that the way in? So
one thing that I've learned is that, because I come across different journalists, and you learn that everybody's way into, you know, journalism is very different. I think the one thing that has been quite common, though, with a lot of people that I've spoken to, is getting that experience. And, you know, it doesn't have to be an established, you know, well-known company. You know, you can do community radio. I know somebody who had their own program on a radio show in their local hospital. And, you know, it's about the skills that you learn that will be very, very useful when you do end up working, you know, on a more professional level, you know, so to say. So I think any experience is useful, even if you have your own YouTube channel and, you know, you're just going around filming relatives and editing, making family videos, you know, anything that shows that you are interested in the field is always useful, you know. So anything that shows that you've got the commitment to make your own content in your own time is always good. So I would say get as much experience as you can. And, you know, as I said, it doesn't have to be with big companies. It can be, you know, anything local. It can be your own YouTube channel. You can start your own podcast with friends. Anything that really kind of will set you apart, because I think a lot of times people will rely on qualifications, which, you know, are important. But if you're somebody who decides, I don't want to do journalism at university, it doesn't mean that you can never work in journalism. That's not true, because there are different, you know, there are short courses that you can do, and there are trainee schemes and so on. But if you're able to say, you know, I'm passionate about, you know, this field, here's what I've done, I think that's one thing that will definitely help you to stand out.
Yeah, Rachel, you're in a position where you're hiring, you know, you're the gatekeeper to your newsroom at certain times. Would those sort of skills that Emmanuelle's talking about be useful if somebody's worked in hospital radio, if they've, you know, run a YouTube channel?
Yeah, and I think I think just showing a bit of yourself and displaying a bit of passion about something goes a long way, actually. You know, maybe it's a story that you read in your local, maybe, I don't know, where you live, you have like a local magazine for your few streets or something, you know, and there was a story in there that caught your eye. Well, perhaps you could take your phone and you could go out and speak to those people and make a little news film out of it, you know, and just for, you know, a 2-minute piece or something, just showing anything that shows a commitment from you to go sort of above and beyond, and that shows an interest in people, I think, and an ability to talk to people, connect with people, and get them to talk to you is massively important. Now, it doesn't even, you can, you know, I know that there's a lot of editing software that's really expensive, and, you know, but there's also a lot that is free to download. Or even if someone just came along to an interview and bought me that this was an interview that I didn't know how to film it, but these are the questions that I asked, and this is what this person said to me. You know, just listening to that kind of thing is amazing, because you will always be asked for ideas. That's the one thing I can say. If you ever turn up anywhere or any broadcaster for any interview, it'll be like, okay, what are your ideas, and why should I care about them? So you need a big sort of wallet full of them, really. And the more you can embellish those ideas with, this is a little bit of filming I did, this is an interview I did, these are photographs that I took that thought could make a digital piece, and, you know, anything extra is a winner.
And it allows you to demonstrate a little bit of yourself as well, which I know that you think is actually really important and what you want to see in an interview.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's really key. I know that people are nervous. I totally understand that. But what really is important to the person doing the interview, they're nervous too. You know, they've got it on their head to, you know, to ask all the right questions, to make all the right notes, to fill it in. You know, they've got pressure too, don't forget. So you know, it's not all on you, this interview. And when I'm doing interviews, I'm looking for someone that's going to fit in with my team. How are they going to fit in with my team? My team's a lively bunch. They're going to want someone that's going to come in and, you know, stand up for themselves. Or perhaps my team are quite old and they're not really wanting to commit to this new technology that I've going on. Perhaps I want someone new and young and enthusiastic who's going to come in here and make everyone go, oh, hang on a minute. If they can do all this stuff, then maybe I need to start learning it. You know, there's lots of different ways that teams come together, and lots of different personalities make a team. Don't be afraid to show your personality. Don't be afraid to show some of yourself, because that will go a long way, I think.
So what, sort of as a final thought on that point, what is your number one piece of advice for somebody looking to land a job in a local newsroom?
I would say have lots of different ideas. Think about the audience, not necessarily the current audience for that program, but the audience that that program will want to attract. Because remember, a lot of our 6:30 and 6 o'clock programs, or Kit will, you know, say, we have an older audience. And there's only one thing happening to that audience. It's very sadly, they are going to die. So we need a newer audience, we need a younger audience, and we need to produce content that is relevant and exciting for them. And everybody that we recruit now, because we haven't been able to recruit for ages, there's been a recruitment freeze, and we have got people that have been in our newsrooms, and I can't talk, I've been there 20 years. We've got, you know, reporters that have been there longer. I'm a relative spring chicken in some cases. So everyone that we bring in, we're going to be like, so how are you going to get us? How are you going to get people your age to watch us? What are you bringing to the party? That is what I'd say is the most important thing.
And Kit, when you were applying for your job at ITV Meridian, what did you tell them you were bringing to the party? You know, what did you sell yourself on?
Well, yeah, one point I was going to make about that is you definitely need the skills that we've spoken about, you know, whether you do a course or a university degree, and you definitely need stories, as Rachel was mentioning. So the skills and stories are key, but also persistence as well. And sort of showing your passion by being a bit annoying and persistently making contacts in newsrooms and keeping in touch with those contacts. If you went back through my old email inbox, my private inbox, there's probably still emails there that I sent to the program editor at ITV Meridian about 4 years ago about wanting to work there. And I only got a job in August there. Do you see what I mean? So building those connections with the sort of decision makers like Rachel in the newsrooms at an early stage, while you're on your undergrad, while you're doing your postgrad. And even if at the moment, because of COVID, someone said in the Q&A box that, you know, there's no work experience because of COVID at the moment. Even if you can't, you can still build that email connection with these people and keep in touch with them and tell them when you come up with a new idea, you know, pitch ideas for the program to them, pitch videos that you think should be on their website, and keep those contacts as much as you can. Some people will just say, look, I haven't got time, or they just won't reply to your emails, but you've just got to be persistent and just keep trying to get yourself out there and show what you're all about. Because yeah, there's so many, you know, emails like that you'll send and never get a reply, but the couple that you will get replies to, and you'll meet up for virtual coffees or whatever we do now and sort of build those connections. It's really important.
Emmanuelle, sort of be bold and ask for the job, I guess. Is that what gets you where you are?
Yes, I agree 100% with everything that Kit has said, and there are moments there where I was like, oh my gosh, that's me. So yeah, definitely, because I think one thing I've learned is that newsrooms are very busy places, and there's always so much going on, and it's very easy, especially when you're new, to kind of want to hide in a corner and not be seen on and not want to be heard, and because, or maybe you're thinking, you know, maybe I'm annoying this person or whatnot. But I think you do have to be bold, and you have to, you know, be outspoken and speak up a lot. And I think one thing to remember is that even if your idea isn't picked up or somebody hasn't responded to your email, it's never in a malicious way. Most of the time, if not all of the time, it's just because people are really, really busy, but they will get back to you. You know, I've had experiences where people haven't gotten back to me straight away, but they always eventually do. And if anything, they're always happy as well to hear from somebody new, because, you know, you're bringing a new perspective, you know, you're bringing ideas that maybe they haven't thought of, or you're bringing an angle to a story that they've done that hasn't been done before. So yeah, I think you definitely have to be confident and speak up. Yeah.
But you don't necessarily need to be through the door before you start making those contacts, is what you're both saying, what you're all saying, in fact. I want to sort of work through some of the questions, because we're into our last 10 minutes, and then we'll go to Kieran Jenkins, as sent us a video with some tips, his top 3 tips. So we'll have that in a minute. But Rachel, there's a question here from Kalisha. She says that she'd like to be in front of the camera, would like her voice heard, would be interested in working in radio and then moving on to TV, but doesn't know where to start or which companies to apply to, because many of the schemes seem to be for producing or directing rather than actually front of camera stuff. What do you say to somebody who wants to be on the telly?
Okay, hi. I think probably if you go for, you say that you're happy to start in radio. So a lot of the schemes for radio will probably be reporter or journalist schemes. And particularly if you're going not so much in commercial radio, unless you are one of the key presenters, but actually in BBC local radio, if you're interested in journalism, then they still have people that go out reporting. And so you would get your voice on the story. You would have the creativity of doing the interviews and of putting the piece together and getting your voice there. And then it's easy when you're in a BBC local radio station if you to make that move across if you want to move into a BBC local TV newsroom, or you can approach your ITV colleagues who also have local TV newsrooms there. um, the reporters will have their faces on stories because there's always the opportunity to do your piece to camera, to do your show and tell for your digi video and things to get yourself out there a bit. But I will be honest with you, if you are looking at presenting opportunities on the 6:30 or the 6 p.m. and ITV, then that is a further down the career, something to aspire to moment, rather than this is me, this is what I want to do now. Which will probably just be a no-go. But if you get all the other experience, who knows what might open up in the future.
There can sometimes be a perception that actually regional newsrooms are a stepping stone to national newsrooms, that's the way that you have to go. But actually, I mean, Kit, your career shows that's not the case. Emmanuel, that's, your career is the same. Is there a sort of career cap in a regional newsroom that doesn't exist in a national newsroom?
No, I don't think so at all. I think it's about work-life balance. Actually, for me, it definitely is about a work-life balance anyway. In the regional newsrooms, we are not a 24-hour operation. We have people working till 11 p.m. at night, and then we have people starting at 5 a.m. the next morning. We are not a rolling news service. We do not go through the night. We do not have 12-hour shifts. The longest shift we have is 10 hours. And because of that, we work 4 days a week. Because we still do a 40-hour week. So actually, I think there comes a point in everybody's life where you decide how much, where the balance tips for you in terms of work and life and the balance of it all. And yes, there is progression from regional newsrooms to network news, absolutely. And I know lots of people that have done it, and I could really off a list of names from our newsroom who've done it. But there is also progression the other way. So lots of people come from network just saying, I've just had enough of that pace, and I kind of want to do something different, and I want to really dig into stories a bit, and I want to work on your politics program or the new current affairs program, which is replacing Inside Out, or for your digital service. There are lots of opportunities locally that perhaps offer you more of a balance than network might do.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. I want to sort of plough through some quick questions very quickly. So Kit, let's send this one to you. Louis has just graduated from his broadcast journalism MA, and he's in the classic dilemma of needing experience to get experience. What should he do? The jobs, he's been rejected, and because he hasn't got enough experience.
Yeah, it's really tough, this. I mean, hopefully, Louis, you did placements during your MA or before that, maybe, or you've had work experience maybe pre-COVID, or maybe oh god, it's been going on so long now. Maybe you couldn't do any placements during your MA, because that's what I found the easiest stepping stone, to go back to those people where I'd done my placements during my postgrad qualification, and pester them basically for freelance shifts, for, now you've graduated, you should be getting paid for it ideally. So, but pestering them for freelance shifts, to meet up, to pitching ideas to them. And it's hard. And what is also hard is when you apply for the advertised jobs, which the ones that are advertised externally are probably a very small proportion of the sort of internal roles that are going round. You're probably up against a lot of people who have a lot of experience. So I think it's about trying to keep in touch with those people you've made connections with and seeing if there are sort of ad hoc freelance shifts places, and then that might lead to a full-time job. That's what happened with me producing at Sky. I managed to get some freelance shifts, and then that led to a short-term contract, and then that led to a staff job. But yeah, try and be persistent. It is really difficult at the moment. I appreciate it.
One question each for Emmanuel and for Rachel. Emmanuel, you said, you know, that your ability to speak French was very useful in getting into World Service, as I can imagine. Is that, what sort of skills, like languages, are useful to people applying for these jobs, you know, that aren't necessarily journalism related, but can come in handy?
So I remember when I did my placement at Rip Off Britain back in 2014, one of the researchers that I'd worked with, and quite a few of them actually, had history degrees. And I remember just sitting there in awe, like, oh my gosh, because I always assumed that people would always come from a, you know, journalism background or had done a journalism degree. But no, they had history degrees. And I remember speaking to them and they were saying, well, you know, a lot of the skills that we learned on that degree, because, you know, they were talking about writing essays a lot, doing a lot of research and stuff like that. And that on the face of it seems like, oh, well, you know, okay, fine, no problem. But when you actually think about it, that in essence is a part of journalism. You know, you're researching stuff, you're trying to find contributors, trying to find story ideas, you're trying to find, you know, case studies and so on. So I think depending on what you've done at university, and I think if I remember correctly, university, generally speaking, were supposed to help you develop various skills. And I think like essay writing would help because, you know, you're doing research, which will help you try and find stories and case studies and stuff like that. So I think this, the skills are different. And I think, as Rachel mentioned, you know, editing is also very useful as well. So even if it's a software that you've bought or a software that comes on your iPad or your iPhone, because I know that the Apple do have some free softwares that you can download and use to edit and stuff like that. So I think, yeah, the skills, there are different skills that will be very useful. Languages, of course. And I think one thing in particular is sometimes, I think to go back to a previous point you mentioned about how can being in regional help you get to national or international. So I recently did a piece about the lack of urgency, if you like, or lack of willingness to take up the COVID-19 vaccine in the Black community. And I did a lot of my filming around Manchester, but that piece ended up running on Afrique, which is the French for Africa service on the BBC. So I just translated it and redid my piece to camera. And then it also ran on Focus on Africa, which is on BBC World News. So I think there are no limits at all. And I think the only limit that you can kind of put is the only limit that you can put on yourself is the limit that you put on yourself, if that makes sense. So yeah, I think skills vary. And if anything, try and look at job advertisements and look at skills that they list as well. And then you can work on developing them as well.
And in sort of one sentence, Emmanuel, I've just seen a question in from Leanna, who says, do you think that a northern accent is a limitation in the broadcast industry?
Absolutely not. No way. No way. Because I can assure you that when I did the French version of my piece, I know for a fact that I've got an English accent when I speak French, but it still went out on air. So absolutely not. Accents do not limit anything.
And Rachel, last question for you. Hang on, where is it? I've lost it. Here we go. What direction or advice would you give to somebody who wants to work in regional newsroom, but not necessarily as a journalist? So, for example, a sound engineer or a camera person. You know, do they need journalism qualifications? You know, how do they approach you?
Yeah, they don't need journalism qualifications at all, but in the same way that we run our journalism apprentices, they often run technical apprentice schemes. So they can look out for those. or they can approach people and see if you know anybody, if you've got a family member or a friend of the family who's already doing the job that you want to do. Can you, when we regain our normal lives, go out with that cameraman, camera woman, and see what they do? Can you experiment with your phone? Because that is the way we're all going to be going. Everyone's got a phone. Everyone can capture that moment. Can you experiment with things like that and just show a commitment and a passion for something? And you can always find out. I mean, one of the assistant editors where I work is a technical assistant editor. So, there will be senior technical people in each newsroom. Try and find out who that is to direct your email to them, or just email in. The website or the email address is given out on most programs because we want our audience to contact us, and ask it to be passed to the person in charge of technical, and put a little bit of video that you've made or something on there, something that's going to stand out really and catch the eye, and say, what have you got, any opportunities, can I help, what could I do? Seek their advice, I think, as well. Keep asking and be willing to take on board that advice, and especially if you do take on board the advice, then come back to that person and say, look, you told me to go and do this, here you are, I've done it, here, have a look at this, what do you think? What, anything yet, or what next? Just keep asking, I would say.
Okay, that kind of brings us to a conclusion. I'm sold. I think you guys have very exciting lives, and I want to be part of it. But so our audience have listened to your advice. They've gone and got their careers all sorted. Now they need tips on how to do it well, and that's where Kieran Jenkins comes in, because he's recorded 3 tips for us on how to be a good regional news journalist.
Hello, Kieran here. I'm really sorry that I can't be with you. I've had the mother of all scheduling clashes on this one, so please forgive me. Sounds like a great event with some great panelists. But I hope I can still contribute, because Ed's asked me to share a few tips about working as a network news correspondent. So here are 3 quick ones. Number 1 is listen. Now, it might sound obvious, but it's so often overlooked. If you're in an interview, whether it's a political interview or another sort of interview that requires you to be more sensitive and humane, if you listen to what people are telling you, you will respond better and you will ask better questions. It also applies to finding stories. If you go out there and find the people in the communities that haven't been listened to, that deserve a hearing, and you give them that, you will find amazing stories, believe me. Second tip is pause. This is incredibly important in TV news. Allow your reporting room to breathe. It applies almost universally. If you're doing a live in an unpredictable environment, you haven't had time to prepare, the temptation is to just talk and talk and talk. Make sure you allow yourself time to pause. It gives people the opportunity to take in what you're saying. It just makes for all-round better reporting. And in scripting, pausing is your friend. Bring in sound from elsewhere. Punctuate your work. And thirdly, I would say, be bold. It's for some people this comes very easily, but for other people it doesn't, and it shouldn't preclude you from being a great journalist. The ability to go into a press conference, for instance, and ask the question that everyone kind of knows is hanging in the air, but nobody has really had the balls to ask. Or to pick up the phone to someone that you think might be interesting, might just have something they could tell you on a total punt. Or to pursue the story that, for whatever reason, other journalists haven't touched. because sometimes it happens, journalists tend to look in the same places for stories. And if you're bold enough to sort of anticipate what other people are doing and look outside of that, then there can be some great rewards, both for you and the people that you're reaching out to and reporting on. So there's 3 tips for you. There are many more, but I'm sure we'd have talked about them if I were actually at the event. But I'm more than happy if you want to get in touch by email or Twitter or anything else to carry on the conversation some other time. So thanks very much. Cheerio.
That was Kieran Jenkins with his top tips for being a broadcast journalist. Listen, pause, and be bold. And I think, well worth listening to. And I think that last point that he made about getting in touch with people and asking questions is a very good one. Most people are quite inclined to respond to tweets or emails. So that brings our session to a close. Thank you so much to the panel. That's Kit Bradshaw, Rachel Sharman, and Emmanuel Lhoni. And thank you, of course, to Kieran Jenkins, and best of luck to him and his wife. The next session is how we got into TV, an introduction to access schemes. So if you're trying to get your foot in the TV door but struggling to find the right people or suitable opportunities, then maybe that's the one for you. That's at 3 o'clock, I think. So thank you all for coming to this session, which was part of the RTS Futures Virtual Careers Fair. The sponsors were headline sponsor NFTS and bronze sponsor IMG Studios. Thank you all, and thanks to everyone for watching and listening.